As a new student at Lothal's Imperial Academy, Zer Leonis does everything it takes to pass as a model cadet. But secretly, he is a hidden enemy in the ranks, determined to discover the truth about his missing sister and to bring down the Empire. When a mysterious new cadet arrives and seems to have rebellion on his mind, Zer is drawn into a reckless plan that could doom them all.
Younglings, and welcome back to the Padawan Library, the Galaxy's only Star Wars junior novel podcast. I am Levi Peretic, and with me, Tim May.
Hello.
And today we are continuing our dive into the series Star Wars Rebels, Servants of the Empire, this is book 2, Rebel in the Ranks by Jason Fry. And then, but before that, we're going to talk about the 1999 box office flop,
yes.
Mystery Men.
So I wanted, before we get into the movie, I wanted to talk through, I did not listen back to last week's episode, but I cannot for the life of me figure out how we got to, I remember that you suggested listening to a Smash Mouth album, and I was against that, and the compromise was because All-Star was written for this movie. Originally, we would watch this movie. But how do we even get the Smash Mouth off of Rebel in the Ranks?
Okay, when in Grav Ball, there are plays that are referred to as Smash Mouth plays.
Oh, that's
do you remember that?
Yes, okay, so that's it? That's what happened?
That's it. Yeah, that's how we got to Smash Mouth. Because I wanted to talk about
like I was watching
the self-titled third album of Smash Mouths, but
yeah, well, no, we're
never
never reviewing a fucking Smash Mouth album. It's just not gonna
well, our compromise was Mystery Men,
a
movie that I saw it a lot as a kid. Hadn't seen it in a long time, so that was one of those movies that I just jump on to rewatch, and we did.
I saw it one time when it came out. I didn't have really any strong memory of it. I remember the basic setup, and I remembered that it had an obscenely stacked cast. But watching it, first of all, this movie is very long, 2 hours and 2 minutes long. Which
it's too long.
For the kind of movie it is, I feel like it's too long. But, so if you guys don't know what Mystery Men is, it's a comedy superhero movie made in 1999, starring Ben Stiller, William H. Macy, and Hank Azaria are the main three.
Mm-hmm. Then on top of that, you got the next three, which is Janine Garoppolo,
yes.
Kel Mitchell, which they promoted the hell out of on Nickelodeon, and I was a big Keenan and Kel fan, so that was my big thing going into this movie. And Paul Rubens as the Spleen.
Who, by the way, the three of them, a much funnier group than the top three. Although William H. Macy, I think, is pretty funny in this movie, but the kind of the second tier of superhero, I think those characters are pretty consistently funny. The joke of each of the characters makes me laugh. Rubens is out of control in it. Like you forget because you only think of him as Pee-wee, but it's just like an incredible comedy performer.
He looks so much. I don't know the actor's name, but do you remember the kid from Near Dark, the vampire kid?
Yes.
He looks so much like that kid. Like the hair he has on him. Like I felt like they look very similar.
Near Dark, masterpiece.
A great movie.
So
And then there's extra people in this movie too. You got Greg Kinnear, who
plays like a corporate superhero, and then the villain, who has an incredible name, the character's name,
Casanova Frankenstein.
An amazing name, played by Jeffrey Rush.
And this is his first American movie, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I guess, yeah, because he's in Shakespeare in Love, which is, I think, produced by by Miramax. But all British talent. Well, outside of Gwyneth. And Ben is in that, too. I don't know. Actually, that's like a co-production.
It could be argued.
You could make a case for that. But, anyway, I think it's... And then, who else? Eddie Izzard's in it.
Eddie Izzard.
Who else?
Tom Waits shows up.
Tom Waits has a pretty
he's
substantial
actually kind
role.
of a pretty substantial role. And then, the Michael Bay cameo in this movie.
Very wild. I was...
Gotta get some brewskis.
Yeah, man. Crazy stuff. Bay has been making... he had a cameo. I don't know if you saw the third Bad Boys that came out last year that he didn't...
No, the one he didn't direct.
He didn't direct, but he has a cameo in it. It's one of the wildest scenes I've ever seen in my life. What a character. Anyway, so... this movie, though, it's directed... What's the director's name? He never directed... Okay. He's a commercial director. Right. And he hated making this movie so much that he went straight back to making commercials.
Kinka Usher.
Is...
Yeah. Okay, yes. And he actually has an interesting story. He actually became a Steadicam operator and then ended up being a camera assistant on a Roger Corman movie. So that classic Corman bump.
Sure.
Wikipedia doesn't say the movie, but it's that Corman bump. Then he went on to direct an Acura commercial.
Yeah.
This Acura commercial won him an award. That's what his directorial debut is. This Acura commercial. Then he forms his own studio, his own commercial studio called House of Usher.
Oh.
And he is responsible for Got Milk ads. He is responsible for Nike ads from the 90s, Nissan, Miller Lite, Polaroid, Pepsi, and what I think is maybe one of his greatest contributions, the Taco Bell Chihuahua.
Oh, the worst contribution. You Taco Bell
fucking
freak. God. Ugh, whatever. Anyway, so
very, very popular. He actually won 4 Golden Lions at Cannes for commercials.
Can.
I didn't even know
singular,
that they did
singular, say
Cannes.
Singular.
I didn't even know they gave out awards for commercials, but apparently they do.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say he won Clio's, but he probably did too. Anyway, major commercial director, and he went right back to making commercials after this movie.
Yes, he did.
From what I gather, he had a pretty miserable time making it. Thought it was just like, I don't want to be working on the same thing for that long, that kind of thing. So...
It was a 6-month shoot, too.
Well,
apparently... It was supposed to go for a real short amount of time. It ended up going 6 months.
Well, the script wasn't finished. I read a thing where Stiller was talking about how they had to rewrite every scene, the day of.
Well, because, he allowed for, all the characters to, basically, write their own dialogue. Mm-hmm. So, Stiller and Janine Garoppolo were apparently, rewriting things all the time.
Yeah. And, Janine Garoppolo, by the way, probably my favorite performance in the movie. She's funny.
She's great.
I love Janine. And then there was but you could tell it's a commercial director because this movie is very clumsily directed as a narrative feature.
I would say too.
There are weird scenes that are not particularly significant, where he's clearly just bored and shooting them with fisheye lenses and head on, and so it's
I remember one particularly clunky scene was when we meet William H. Macy, the shoveler, his wife, and there's a establishing shot, and then they have this moment where they're looking head on at each other, and they're having this deep conversation, and the camera's just lingering, it is a steady cam, and it is just lingering in this kitchen, and then he just randomly cuts to these close-ups of them that make no sense into the pacing of the conversation.
Well, it's very it's the way when you're making a 30-second commercial, you have to like condense everything, so there's lots of cutting that wouldn't make sense in a scene that's more like traditionally spread out. I don't know. The production design is looks expensive. I don't know if it's good, but
I think the production design is all right. It was expensive. It's a $60 million movie that only grossed $30 million.
Yeah.
And I think the first half hour of this movie is very of the superhero movie at the time, and it's really just, I think, blatantly ripping off Batman, and like almost like that Schumacher Batman kind of pace, that Batman Forever kind of pace.
Well, it's interesting because this movie comes out, 2 years after Batman and Batman and Robin was seen at the time, and I can say this as a huge dork that was on all the superhero hype message boards and all that shit, that Batman and Robin was seen as the end of the road for the most part, and that this was a dead genre. Now, and then Mystery Men comes out in '99, and is like kind of like the comedy, like let's make fun of this thing that we're done with, is the vibe. And then the next year is when X-Men comes out, and that kind of relaunches things. Then Sam Raimi's Spider-Man obviously takes it to another level. And now, it's all we have. It's the only fucking kinds of movies that get made.
Well, this is an interesting Wikipedia fact.
Yeah.
In mid-1997, I can't remember when Batman and Robin came out.
That's probably around then.
But a slew of comic book movies were announced by various studios, including Mystery Men. The other titles include Blade, Virus, Superman Lives, X-Men, The Fantastic Four, The Hulk, Captain America, Submariner, Iron Man, Daredevil, Silver Surfer, Hellboy, Concrete, Green Hornet, and 26 other comic book related titles.
Well, okay, so that's interesting because a couple of those did have, obviously, setting aside the Marvel stuff, that obviously all of that eventually happened in some form.
Mm-hmm.
But
about 10 years later, those actually happened.
Sure. But as far as I know, the movie Virus did get made.
It did.
And Concrete is an interesting one. I would love for somebody to finally try to make a Concrete movie, because this is based on a Dark Horse comic. That's the other thing. Mm-hmm. Dark Horse, which was was kind of vying for third biggest publisher throughout the 90s, and probably into the 2000s. I think they've fallen back at this point, but
just a little. Well, they lost that Star Wars license.
Yeah, all the licenses have kind of left. I mean, I think they're probably doing fine, but regardless, in the 90s though, they had like pretty critically acclaimed stuff going on. There was Concrete by Paul Chadwick, and you had Sin City, Frank Miller, and you had Usagi Yojimbo by Stan Sakai. Like, very good, like, real, like, high level, like, critically acclaimed comics going on.
And Hellboy is also
Hellboy, of course, yeah, Hellboy, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And was what was this one I just had in my head? Not Spawn. Wasn't Spawn Dark
Spawn
Horse?
is Image. That's a different thing entirely. And Spawn's not really, like, on the same, like, critical echelon.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, well, because Sin City, that's, like, high up there.
Sure, yeah. But all those, I mean, Concrete is probably broadly considered by, like, true comics heads, like, one of the great comics of all time, but it is only known by people that read comics, like, a lot. But it's a great comic book. Anyway, Mystery Men, not really like a major. It's based on the Flaming Carrot characters. Flaming Carrot is a character I only knew really because there was a crossover with Ninja Turtles once. I'm not that familiar with these characters, but from what I gather, the movie is kind of its own thing to some degree. It takes the character ideas and plays with them. And then Stiller, let's talk about Stiller a little bit, because this is an interesting moment for him, because I think he starts making this movie before he becomes a huge movie star, but it comes out after There's Something About Mary, though.
Yes, it
Like,
does.
so, yeah, I think he started making this before that movie comes out, though.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's probably right.
it's interesting because that movie, obviously he was a known quantity, he had a TV show, and he had directed a couple movies, and, like, directed Reality Bites and The Cable Guy. But, you know, there's something about Mary establishes what his movie star persona is for the next several years. I mean, it's sort of changed now in some ways as he's gotten older. But this movie, though, is much, much closer in I'm not saying in quality, but in sensibility to the Ben Stiller show and to, like, into The Cable Guy, which he's or, like, his small role in Happy Gilmore, like, weirdo character stuff is much more like what this is, whereas not that, I mean, There's Something About Mary is a pretty weird movie, but he's playing, like, a, like, quote-unquote normal guy. Like, I mean,
Right.
It's kind of like a truly deranged version of what a normal guy is, of course, but, like,
I just rewatched that movie.
that's a fantastic movie. I mean, I don't know how it holds up, I don't know, but, like, I think it's, you know, it's a great movie, I think. But, there's
an interesting Stiller fact about this. Stiller is actually the second choice for director on this movie.
Oh, he didn't direct it, though, but yeah.
No. First choice on this movie is Danny DeVito.
Well, he had a great directing career at this time.
And he had a $13 million deal going for this movie. And the one thing that it hinged on was he wanted to have control over the soundtrack, and the studio wouldn't give it to him, so he walked away.
Wow. So we would not have All Star if Danny got his wishes, probably.
Yeah. Then Stiller comes in. I guess Stiller doesn't want to devote the time to it, kind of thing. Like, he's like, I got other things going. I don't want to direct a movie right now. So then they bring in Usher, and he signs on. And then they cast Janine Garoppolo in the movie,
who was on the Ben Stiller show.
Yeah, and Janine is the one who convinces Ben to join the movie. Like, even though he's, like, already turned down directing, she convinces him to come on as an actor. And they originally want him for the Blue Raja. But he's like, I don't want to play, like, a character part again. So that's when he chooses Mr. Furious. And then apparently his idea with Mr. Furious was originally written as just, like, hot and angry all the time, and he's like, well, that character has, like, no range, like, so that's where he, like, tones it down and brings in this whole
idea
a
pretty
that,
funny
like,
impulse,
that he can't, like, get furious sort of
like,
thing.
That
yeah,
his persona is that he's mad all the time, but, like, there's nothing, he's not actually mad about anything. Like, that's
yeah, exactly.
That's one of the funnier, I think here's my problem with this movie. I think conceptually almost every concept for character or scene is a funny idea, but I think it comes down to that it is just very poorly directed, and I think that a lot of the scenes just limp, are very limp, you know, and I feel bad because you have really good performers in most of these roles, and you have, like, I think conceptually lots of funny ideas, but it's just nothing is, like, not nothing, but very few sequences, like, land fully for me.
I agree with that 100%. So, and isn't this right around the time that Paul Rubens has Blow coming out too?
That comes out a couple years later. That's like 2001.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So.
This was the kind of comeback tour for Paul Rubens at the time. But I mean, he's very funny. He's probably the most consistently just, like, I laughed at pretty much everything with him. Like, there's just some great line readings, and, like,
the whole story about him telling how he got his powers, like,
that is
cursed by the gypsy woman, is like
that's
pretty. The delivery of that whole story is very funny.
No, I mean, like, there's I was worried coming in to it because I didn't really remember. I was like, well, Hank Azaria, famously the voice of Apu, which is, you know, a somewhat controversial situation, and I was like, I saw the thumbnail on the streaming service I watched it on, and I was like, oh yeah, he wears a turban in this. Oh, is he just doing the Apu voice? You know, I love Apu the character, but, like, I'm not sure I want to see Hank Azaria, like, live action just doing that. So I was like, oh, this might be rough. But turned out know he's doing a British accent, and you find out the character is American.
Right, just doing a British
accent, which is pretty funny. The funny idea. Again, like, I liked all the kind of, like, conceptually, I found a lot of the stuff, like, in my head, I was like, that's a funny idea. That's funny,
Mm-hmm.
like, but it just felt like the execution was just never fully there, felt half-baked, and I get, like, I get why I know, like, this is kind of a cult movie now, like, there are people who really love this movie,
Mm-hmm.
but I like, it just feels like everybody on screen who I like pretty much everybody in this movie from other stuff, and I would honestly there's other projects where I get what I want out of that, like, I will say this probably, like, this and Wet Hot American Summer are probably the only movies where Janeane Garofalo got to do what she did on the Ben Stiller show and play, like, weird characters, because, like, she was mostly cast as, like, the best friend in romantic comedies, or very briefly as the lead in romantic comedies, but, like, it was like so it's nice to see her get to play, like, a character part like this.
Fun tidbit, by the way, yesterday was the 20th anniversary of Wet Hot American Summer, yesterday being Tuesday, so...
The finest American comedy of the last 20 years, so
I agree.
Or I guess now the last 21 years. The 21st century, we'll just say. Great movie. I mean, and I think tonally this movie's kind of going for the same vibe, obviously. It's, like, just kind of an absurdist comedy, but there's, like, it just doesn't have the direct, like, in this movie directed by Ben Stiller, frankly, who is actually very good at directing this kind of movie.
Would be a better movie.
Would be better, or someone like David Wayne, or someone like that kind of sensibility behind the camera, I think would be stronger. Who was the other person you told?
Oh, DeVito.
DeVito, also perfect, honestly. DeVito would be great for it. I think, like, but, like, Stiller is coming off of The Cable Guy, which, is a unfairly maligned movie in my opinion, like a truly crazy movie. And then
I've only seen that movie once, but I remember it being so dark.
It's a wild movie. I actually really like that movie. But then he does Zoolander right after this. He directs that, which is a great movie. I know that because the sequel was so bad, now people pretend like that movie wasn't great. But
the first one's still a masterpiece.
That is a masterpiece. I agree. Like, it's so funny. But then, and one of Terrence Malick's favorite films. That's a classic tidbit about Zoolander. All
right. An actor who I really enjoyed in this movie, who doesn't get a whole lot of time, is Greg Kinnear, who is Captain Amazing.
And he's, like, his name? Yeah, Captain Amazing. He's on a great run around this time. I rewatched As Good as It Gets recently, which is a movie that, it's the James L. Brooks movie with Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt and Greg Kinnear. And a movie that I was like, how's this movie going to hold up? And in some ways it doesn't. In other ways it holds up really well. And Kinnear plays, like, the gay neighbor character. And Kinnear is fantastic in that movie. It's, like, not, like, a very... Like, it's not a remotely, like, late... It doesn't feel like a late 90s gay guy performance, which is impressive. And Nicholson is incredible, but he's also, like... The character is so detestable at the beginning that he has to work really hard for you to buy the kind of, like, redemption arc of the character. But it's, I love Nicholson, though. I can watch him in anything. But the...
Kinnear in this movie was giving me, like, Michael Keaton vibes as Batman.
Oh, I can see that. He has kind of a Keaton vibe in general.
He does. He does.
Because he's, like, got that kind of, like...
Keaton vibe.
I'm, like, a comedic actor, but, like, I'm also very handsome, so, like, I do, like, serious roles, too. I mean, not... Keaton's a weirder looking guy, of course, but, like... he's handsome, but in a much different way. But there's, yeah, I don't know. I liked Kinnear a lot. We forgot to mention him. Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know. It's a stacked cast. I wish I liked it more, but it's certainly, like, worth watching if you're, like, into extravagant studio comedies. That's something that you're never getting. Those aren't coming back, so you might as well go back and enjoy some.
Very extravagant. They spent so much money on this movie. It's crazy. So, but okay, I don't think we need to talk anymore about that film.
All right. So next week we were talking before the episode recording.
Mm-hmm.
Next week's book is Servants of the Empire #3, Imperial Justice. So we don't really know what we're doing. We're
still trying to figure that one out.
Tossed around a few ideas. We might do an album. We might do a film.
We could always pull something like I wonder if there's anything with servants in the title, because we could always pull from that too.
Oh, there's that M. Night Shyamalan show on Apple TV Plus, Servant.
Oh, I'd have to get Apple TV
No,
Plus.
Forget it then. Don't worry about it.
Have you watched that?
I haven't, actually. I think he just directed the pilot. I'm not sure if he's like that.
Well, I mean, we could just do the pilot. I'm sure there's you could get a free trial of that, because there's that movie on there that where the people are trapped in a musical. Have you seen the ad for that one?
It's not a movie. It's a TV show.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd still watch that. So.
Yeah.
But
it has
I keep getting ads.
Some good,
I keep getting
good stuff on that. For All Mankind, good show.
Mm-hmm. You talked about that. You like that. So, I keep getting ads for Apple TV while I'm watching Hulu, because my mother doesn't pay for the adless Hulu. She pays for ads, which is crazy. I also my iPad thinks I'm in New York City for some reason, so I get New York City get vaccinated ads, which are super funny because they pick some very interesting people I can't even describe these people.
Like celebrities or?
No. These are just like people on the street who just got vaccinated. So they get this one guy, and he's like, I had some conditions, physically, so I thought it was the right thing to do.
I love it.
And then they get this one woman, and she's like, my mom got it, my dad got it, I got it, and then she looks off the camera like she's like questioning what she's about to say. Then she looks back at the camera and she goes, I feel good, like there's like this moment of hesitation there, and then there's this one guy who is like, he is in a Yankees hat, and he's just like, you go down, you roll up your sleeve, you get the shot, you're done, you're good. Well,
I agree with all those New Yorkers. So everybody
go do it.
Very
New York, and we get
you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
Exactly. And we get these ads every single commercial break on Hulu. So.
That's great. I love when you get local ads on these streaming. I actually don't love it. It makes me feel uncomfortable. But like on Spotify, there are some podcasts that are hosted on Spotify, and so during the ad break, you'll just get like a random local ad. I'll get like an ad for like some fucking charter school in here. You go screw, fuck charter schools. But I'm in education. I'm allowed to bitch about this anyway. But anyway, some charter school in Erie advertises me on my podcast, and like, what the fuck is going on here? I don't know. All right, love New York. Everybody should get the vaccine, and we'll be back and we'll do the review. All right, see you in a bit. Welcome back to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May, here as always with Levi Paratic.
Hello.
And before we get to our review, we talked during the break. Mm-hmm. We deliberated. And we decided,
probably talked for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, we went over.
Usually we get right to the record, but we had to figure this out.
Went over a lot of different options for what we're going to talk about next week. Remember, the book is Servants of the Empire #3, Imperial Justice. So we thought justice, just is the root word of justice. And what's a film with the word just in it? It doesn't have to be a film, actually. Why don't we make it a television program? Let's talk about the pilot episode of the 90s NBC sitcom Just Shoot Me.
That's what we agreed on.
Am I right about which show this is? This is Helen Hunt and Paul Reiser and David Spade, I believe. Am I right?
David Spade is in this. I know that. I cannot confirm Helen Hunt, but I know.
like mixing it up with another show?
Because George Segal shows up. He's in the top cast.
Okay, George, yeah.
Enrico Colantoni.
Castellan, yeah, from Veronica Mars, the dad.
Yeah, and then Laura San Giacomo. Yeah. That's the top billed cast for the show.
What is the show that I'm thinking of with Helen Hunt and Paul Reiser?
Helen Hunt. Hang on, let me actually look that up.
This is a major...
Mad About You.
Mad About You. I mixed these
That's
up
what you're thinking of.
God damn it. I thought we were going to be watching that. Okay, we're watching the pilot for Just Shoot Me. It's fine. Well,
Spade better be in the pilot. I hope Spade is not like a later cast.
Yeah, we'll see. We can talk about how mad... whatever, we'll talk about it. Yeah, we'll talk about it all next week. All right, so this week, though, we are doing Book 2 of Servants of the Empire, which is called Rebel in the Branks, which is, at least part of this, is adapted from the Rebels episode. The
Rebels episode, which is Breaking Ranks, written by Greg Wiseman.
The creator of Gargoyles.
I didn't know that.
I'm a big fan of that show, so...
I also want to... I remember there was a John Paul who did the cover art last week, and Jim Moore did the cover art this week.
Oh, so different guys, yeah.
They seem very similar covers, so...
I mean, they might have been... I wouldn't be surprised if they were both, like, concept artists on the show or something.
Yeah, so... I haven't done any sort of research for those people or Jason Fry.
Well, we still got 2 more weeks on this. So, this book, but most of that kind of like adaptation of that episode doesn't happen until the last act of the book. The book.
Did you rewatch the episode? Because I did not.
I did rewatch the episode. But,
okay, good.
I had remembered it. It's largely the last act, but it's just from Ezra's perspective. So, the last act of the book is very similar. Otherwise, anyway, so.
And is Mary in it? I didn't think she is.
She's not.
Okay,
no.
I didn't think
so. You don't have that scene with Zeb and Sabine.
Right.
That scene's not in there, so you don't see her at all. She's mentioned, I believe.
Okay.
So, anyway, remember we left off. Zare had just entered this Imperial Academy on Lothal. Because his sister had disappeared the previous year from that academy, and he wants to take it down from the inside, etc., find out what happened to his sister. His girlfriend, Mary or Marai or whatever it is, she's at a different school, but she's working on she's an expert slicer.
They call her a slicer in this book, so they use that term this time.
And she's trying to kind of hack into the slice into the Treasury Department's thing, not Treasury, Transportation
the Imperial.
Department.
Well, she's trying to like find a backdoor into like the Imperial computers.
Find out what happened to Zare's sister Dara.
Yeah.
Is it Dara?
Yes, Dara. Yes. It's Dara. So mostly the plot there's 2 plots basically going on. You have Mary who is doing her slicing. I like to think Jason Fry forgot the term slicer when he was writing the first book. And then
he was
like,
reminded by like his editor, like, hey, slicer.
Pablo was like, hey, why didn't you use the term slicer, And like, oh, damn it. Like, so, that's basically her and how she has to find this program that gives her the information. She gets this from a crime organization known as the Gray Syndicate, I think, is what gives it to her. And then, but meanwhile, her parents are also expert slicers, but for the Empire. And in the meantime, she's like trying to like grill them for information,
like on how things work and all this stuff. And yeah, it's. I actually really enjoyed this part of the book. So
I did too.
Yeah.
I did too. So, and then the second half of the book is what the main half is Zare in the academy with all his buddies, which not his buddies, but he's part of a squad.
His squad mates, yeah.
I can't remember their squad name.
Well, one of them is named
Urek Squad. Aurek.
Yeah, and one of the guys is named Oleg, and this, of course, you and I are big Americans fans.
Yes.
The television show, The Americans, and I was very disappointed in Oleg.
I feel like we've actually encountered another Oleg on this podcast.
Yeah, but I feel like it was a different spelling prior,
I think it was too, but I think he was a cooler Oleg than this Oleg. This Oleg, to me, because I didn't watch the episode, he would have been in the episode.
He is in the episode, yeah.
To me, he's just kind of like a brute sort of like character, and that's the way I read him.
Whereas Oleg is in the Americans is such a super fucking cool tall king, you know what I'm talking about?
Suave.
Tall, so suave.
He's just the suavest comrade of them all. So.
Anyway, yeah, they
with one of the bleak, they know the way they leave his Oleg in the Americans too is so crazy.
Watch The Americans, people. What a show! I don't know I don't know what streaming service it's currently on, but
I know it was on Amazon, so that's where I watched it. But that was years ago.
Oh, yeah. It was an FX show, right?
Oh, it should be on Hulu.
It should be on Hulu then. Yeah, all right.
Mm-hmm.
A masterpiece. Anyway, so.
It's so funny. We've had this conversation before,
about
and you're
Oleg,
just probably repeating it verbatim.
Whatever. That was 2 years ago. People could listen to us talk to swoon about Oleg again. Why not? So this. Who else? What's the other guy's name that ultimately?
Okay. There's Jai Kell is the one teammate or co-mate or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
Oleg, and then you have Pandak Sims, and Pandak eventually he goes home. Basically, he
can't cut it basically, and
he's kicked out of the academy.
Zare is trying to help him and all the things, and they're like, no, you can't help your.
I got kicked out of the Imperial Academy for having a mind of my own. The classic Solo line.
Oh, sure, whatever. But and so there's and I think there's also a. I am struggling here.
Okay, well, you have the
other guy,
the
Kai.
drill instructor.
Oh, there's the other guy, Kai, winds up being important, as I should say.
Yes.
Whatever his name is. Am I right about that name?
It's are you talking about the Imperial dude?
No, the other member of the squad.
Oh, there's Jai or
Jai.
Hi,
or whatever. That character winds up being important. So
Jai
anyway,
Kell. Yeah.
There's this drill instructor. What's her name?
Kurahi. Does she show up in the episode?
I don't remember her. No.
Okay. All right. And then there's Lieutenant Cryon, or
Chiron, or
Chiron.
Sarah. Yeah. Okay. And the drill, the woman, she's very hard ass, Arlie Ermy in Full Metal Jacket kind of vibe. And then what's his name? Chiron or Saron.
Chiron.
Yeah.
He's described as very handsome.
He's handsome and a nice guy, seemingly. He wants to he's heard about Zare's sister, wants to help him by asking around, see what's going on with that. That ultimately comes back to bite him because there's a superior. It's just you don't need to be worried about that. Dresses him and Zare down in the same scene about how they're worried too much about where this woman is, this missing woman. So it's
and that character too is he's presented as a good guy, and Zare he's always a little skeptical because that's sort of the internal battle that Zare has going in here is that okay, I'm undercover, I'm trying to figure out where my sister is, but at what point do I forget the role that I'm playing of good Imperial student, so that's sort of his internal battle during this book. So anyway, it's a lot of drills, a lot of that sort of we're in boot camp sort of story. the one doesn't cut it, and then his replacement comes in, who is Ezra, under the name Dev Morgan.
Yep.
And actually, Ezra is never addressed as Ezra in this book. He is always just Dev. Zare never learns his name, actually.
Yes.
So that's pretty much that. And then by that point, we get into the episode territory a little bit because
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because basically Mary, she's gotten like an extra layer in, but she needs this decoder disc sort of thing, and Zare is going to steal one from whose office is it? Callus's office.
Callus, yeah.
Agent Callus. He's going to steal it from Agent Callus's office. However, when he goes to steal it, Dev Morgan is already about to steal it too.
For other purposes.
For other purposes.
This is basically the plot of the episode.
And then Zare says you can't leave because an alarm will go off. My sister told me, and then we get into the episode territory. So if we don't want to describe this, we could just tell people to go watch the episode.
Go watch the episode. It's on Disney Plus. It's a good one. It's probably the best episode of season 1, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So then there is also important stuff going on, though. I mean, I will say the stuff with Miri or Mariah or Mary or whatever, I can't figure out how to pronounce the name.
There's a lot of wacky names. Fry comes up with a lot of wacky, hard to pronounce names.
But the stuff with her and her parents, I think, is really strong. There's a whole thing where she poses as like a local, like daughter of an Imperial officer, and like to sell like raffle tickets, like.
Mm-hmm. This is how she's getting her program into like the computer system. How she's hacking.
That scene's very fun.
And because she ends up like selling the raffle ticket, she she walks out with like 100 credits or something like that. And then she also too in order to get her program on the computer, she basically leaves flash drives around the building, and the flash drives have one single file on them, and the file is like proposed employee bonuses, is the name of the file, and sure enough, it gets installed on the system. So
the big thing that Zare finds out from Ezra that is important, like obviously this is in the episode, but should be mentioned, is that Ezra is beating all of them in these challenges very easily because he's using the Force, and then Jai Kell is also doing very well because he's Force sensitive, although he's not aware of it. And so Ezra's like, I gotta make sure that Jai Kell and I don't get taken because the Inquisitor is coming at the end of the week, and he's gonna take us away. And then Zare tells him the story about his sister, and he's like, yeah, your sister probably was Force sensitive and was taken by the Inquisitor. That's why she went missing, and that's why they're telling you this bullshit story about her abandoning the thing. So that's important. Zare knows that now. And then in the epilogue, basically, Zare tells Mary about it, and Mary winds up...
she finds out what planet his sister's on.
She finds out, the planet, and he's going to try to get transferred there, basically. Because she's at a Imperial Academy on a different planet, and so then, but then her mother calls her down and is just like, hey, because she had been investigating some of these security breaches into the transportation department at work, which were obviously being done by Mary, and Mary thought she had covered all her tracks, but turns out she hasn't. Her mother doesn't know exactly where yet, but it's like, once we get when we feed the information, it'll lead us to what connection it's being sent to or whatever, so we're going to know soon. And so Mary is screwed, she's about to get found out by her parents that she's been slicing into Empire records.
That's pretty big.
So.
Another moment that I liked here, because we don't usually have relationships going on in these books that we read, so it's kind of interesting. We have this boyfriend-girlfriend thing going on, and on page 144, this is when Zare, he's like, I need to go to Callus's office to have him distracted so this dev can steal this decoder. I need you to send me a fake requisition order. So as he made his way to Agent Callus's office, he neared the door and his data pad beeped. There was a requisition order for Callus. Oh, Mary, I love you, he thought. Then he read the order she created. You've got to be kidding me. And that's the pod racer part. So it was just like that moment of like, oh, I love you. And then it's just like, ugh. But that scene's very funny. The pod racer part scene is very silly.
Yeah, it's, and yeah, Callus, one of my favorite characters from Rebels. He has a very good arc over the course of the series. So, yeah. I really liked this. I didn't like it quite as much as the first one. I thought the first book was like one of the better books. I gave it 9 with room to improve, but like that's like one of the better books we've read for the show, honestly. So this one, it was like basically another school year. It was kind of interesting on that level. I just thought the kind of boot camp stuff was a little like just something a little played out as an idea, but otherwise it was still compelling. And obviously, like, the last third of the book is basically just an episode of Rebels that I've already seen, so it wasn't like as revelatory, but I still liked it quite a bit, and the cliffhanger got me very excited for the third book. So I want to give it love, and I'm going to just stick it a 9. It's going to go flat. I think it is a down.
That's really high.
I think it's still a step down from the previous book, but I think I underrated the previous book, frankly. But I just feel like this is very consistently strong, and if I hadn't seen that Rebels episode before, I think this would still be a 9. So I'm going with 9.
All right. I'm not going to go as strong, because I thought this book was a step down, so I'm going to actually go with a 7. And I didn't rewatch the Rebels episode. I did remember the plot points as I was reading that, and this book does a good job at like reviewing those plot points of the story, and it adds little bits in between the stuff with Mary and where the requisition order comes from, and then the whole scene with Sabine and Zeb is added in there too. And there's also the whole thing where it's like Sabine is having like trouble like doing the hack her slicing, and Mary's just like, oh well, if you try this that'll work, and then
Sabine's just like slowly like she's just like, I respect you as a slicer,
But I think her storyline in the book is the more interesting storyline. So I think and I hope that continues. I hope that that goes on for the rest of the series. So
yeah, I mean, he's decided he's staying in the academy. So,
but something else that's important here, because I don't think this is covered in Rebels, is the fact that Zare basically he realizes the Force is real because of Dev Morgan, and that that's where his sister went. His sister went with the Inquisitor or whatever, and he basically has to he acts like he has the Force. In order to get the Inquisitor,
in order to keep the Inquisitor interested in him, so that maybe he will wind up being sent to the same facility. Is basically
right. He's just like, oh, me and my Inquisitor says, oh, it's a shame that your sister's dead, and Zare very smartly is like, I would know my sister would be dead or not. We've always shared a connection since we were young. And that's when the Inquisitor is like, I
see. So, yeah, no, I'm very excited about this series. So, yeah, next week we'll be doing Book 3,
Imperial Just Shoot Me.
Just Shoot Me. Justice. And we'll be covering the pilot episode of Just Shoot Me.
I'm going to be so disappointed if there's no Spade in that pilot.
Yeah, I don't even know if I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. I'm sure we'll be able to find it.
If it was on NBC, it's got to be on Peacock.
We'll find it. I'm sure it's somewhere.
You would hope. I just hope Spade's not like a late season edition like he was on My Wife and Kids. Not My Wife and Kids. What was that show with John Ritter?
Oh, 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter.
8 Simple Rules, yeah. David Spade, very late addition to that show.
Well, yeah,
so.
And then he was also, I believe, in 7 seasons of a show called Rules of Engagement that I don't know anyone that aired for 7 seasons. Yeah. We'll get to that all next week. But otherwise, hey, follow us on Instagram and email us.
Yeah, we should promote that more.
Padawan
on social media.
gmail.com and all that stuff. Subscribe, rate us 5 stars only, I guess. We're only got a few months here, but anyway, so come back next week, but,
Until then.
The library.
Until the books are due back.
The library is closed. Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by The Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2021. Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.